colleges and universities as part of the lockdown measures to contain the spread of the virus. Since then, there have been developments with many institutions opting to have recourse to the use of information and communication technology to deliver their programs online at a distance to mitigate loss of learning. But while school closures seem to present a logical solution to social distancing within communities, prolonged closures tend to have disproportionately negative impact of the most vulnerable students. Bottom line, is the government prepared to cushion the education sector from adverse effects of coronavirus? Well, many thanks for joining Youthpad. My name is Francis Ngala, and to help me break this down, I'm joined by Reverend Thegu, a lecturer at Presbyterian University of East Africa. Many thanks for making time to come and share about such a sensitive topic, and especially at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Gala, for having me.
Yes, and you're a former Deputy Secretary General of PCEN.
That's true. I was the Deputy Secretary General of PCA as from 2012 all the way to April 2016.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, first of all, first things first, do you think as a Minister of Education we are prepared and as our exams on as we talk right now?
Well, if we are to take the word of the cabinet of the CS,
yes,
the exams are on. However, the practicality of that will need to be broken down to many of us, parents, learners. Everybody would like to know how exams will be undertaken. But if we are to take his word, and the word of the president as well, is that the exams will be on this year. And he said there will be no change. The calendar will be as it has been.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's no any changes that is going to be made or even changed?
It sounds that the official policy is that exams will go on as previously. Though there are, as I said, there are many questions in the minds of many of us.
But what do you think as a lecturer and as a senior lecturer at Presbyterian University of East Africa, bearing in mind that the students and the pupils, primary school pupils, have not even exhausted the syllabus? Do you think it is right, and especially having the exams on?
Gala, that's why I started by saying that this thing needs to be broken down. Of course, all learners were expecting exams at the end of the year. Yes. Those who got to any level that they got to, those in Form 4, those in Class 8, and parents as well, and the country was expecting exams at the end of the year. But due to the pandemic that broke out at the beginning of the year, then there's confusion because not much had been covered. So our question, the questions in the minds of many people is, how do you administer exams when learners have not gone through the curriculum?
Yes.
Yet, the government is saying the exams will be on. So it needs to be broken down how that can happen, because it sounds very strange. It sounds a bit weird because we have not been told what will be done in the meantime for the learners to be ready for the exam.
Yes.
Yes.
So can we estimate how much the COVID-19 interruption will and have affected learning in the country?
It have affected learning in a very big way. Remember, this pandemic was declared here in Kenya in mid-March, meaning that the learners were only in school for about 2 full months.
Yes.
Then the pandemic breaks out, and then the schools are closed. So little learning had taken place. How do we expect then that is adequate for an exam? I would think the best thing would be to tell us what can be done to prepare the learners for that exam, if it's possible to do it. And since we have minds in the ministry who are paid to do the thinking, when such things happen, they need to exercise their minds and tell us what can be done. Otherwise, just telling us there will be exams, it adds a lot of confusion to learners, as I said, to parents, and even to all of us who are stakeholders in the education sector.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, and also talking about the extension of the learning, the closure of the schools. The CS last week made an announcement that the extension of the closure of the school have been extended effective on Monday, that is 4th May.
Yes.
Do you think the government is being rigid, knowing that the students have not exhausted well the syllabus? Don't you think that the government needs also to bend down and also make some changes, and especially so that the students can get enough time?
I wouldn't say that they are not being realistic by extending the closure of schools. What would be unrealistic is saying that the exams that were set when coronavirus was not factored will be the same exams that will be administered in the course of the year. Unless there is another exam that will be set, which interestingly would only cover a very small area, because you cannot test learners. That's not in the philosophy of education. You don't test learners on areas you have not taught.
Sure.
You only teach or avail the curriculum, give adequate time to cover the curriculum, then you administer exams. Yes. Otherwise, we know that we haven't had adequate time to do that. I know there are schools that are able to cover their curriculum in 2 terms. There are some that go on even into the 3rd term.
Yes.
Because like for KCPE, the exam comes in November. There are schools that are still struggling to cover the curriculum as late as October. So when you say that what has been covered up to March, when students were just warming up to their class 8, to their form 4, is what will be tested, then because I believe the exams that had been set were tailored towards the entire curriculum. Yes. How do you go about it? I would think maybe what the minister would be doing, along with the KICD, that is the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development, is coming up with an abridged curriculum. Yes. Then look for modalities of making this curriculum get to the learners. And my thinking is that they could even revive the radio broadcast, because radios are very effective. Don't talk about internet, because internet is just too ambitious for some places. Yes. But maybe radio broadcast, you can bring learners together, maybe in a ward, and the learners can be taken through the abridged curriculum, yes. And then we can talk about an exam. But at this point, talking about an exam is shooting in the dark.
Yes.
Yes.
But Mr. Thegu, there's a whole range of issues such as the infrastructure. There's also internet connectivity. Mm-hmm. I mean, let's talk about online learning. Mm-hmm. How can government tap on this, considering that there are places where there's no electricity at all?
To be sincere, online learning is a big joke. It's a big joke because the Jubilee government started by saying that it will provide laptops for class 1 learners. Yeah. By now, the ones who provided the laptops should be in class 6, hoping that every other class has got their laptop as from that year. That has not really happened. So that is lost. Number 2, there is the challenge of having gadgets that can access online learning. Yes. How many learners are able to have gadgets to do that? Smartphones, laptops, tablets. How many learners are able to have all those? Again, even the teachers themselves. Yes. Some of them are not very conversant with the use of ICT. So when you tell them to administer what they themselves need to be trained on, you are stretching your imagination too far, because the lecturers themselves may not be ready to do such a thing. The learners themselves do not have the gadgets. Even if they had them, you need bundles, to power those things. But bundles are expensive. Even for those of us who use them, you have to be very careful, because you end up using a lot of money in buying bundles. Sure. So this, again, electricity. They said that they had connected almost all primary schools to the grid. Yeah. But that needs to be investigated. Again, if you had connected the primary schools, the learners are not in schools. So homes, they have no electricity to do that. So how do you make all those learners at the same time access education and be at par? Because you do not want some to be ahead and some to be left behind. So I would say the whole idea of online learning, even in the universities themselves, it's not really working.
We have private institutions that have adopted this online learning.
What we should remember is that in this country, people are not at the same level economically. There are people who are doing very well economically, and they are able to access internet and online things very easily. But that's a very small fraction. The bulk of Kenyans is not able, particularly people living in rural areas, people living in arid, semi-arid areas, people who are fighting floods now, people who have been displaced by the floods, people who have lost loved ones, people who are in anxiety. These are not the kind of people you'd expect to have gadgets and to have the access, the ability to access online learning. Yeah. Yes.
And so, in case of a possibility of this, how prepared is our community? Are teachers prepared with the same? Have they familiarized with the tools? In case of a possibility of this, because we have seen many institutions, we have seen private sectors, Brookside, have adopted online learning. We heard the other day, we heard also UON also trying to adopt. I don't know if it went through. How prepared are we?
I would say that if coronavirus had given us notice that it will come at a certain time, possibly would be about 70% prepared for it. But now, coronavirus came like the Messiah, who told us he will come, but we are not sure exactly when he will come.
Yes.
So coronavirus just came. No institution, no government was ready for it. You can see how it has harassed even the big economies. As for us, who are not ready at all, we have not prepared our teachers, we have not prepared our lecturers, we have not prepared our learners. An announcement was just made. Schools are closed. Go home. Then we started fabbling. No, learning has to go on. What method can we use? We hear there are people who use online, online channels. Maybe we can use it. But we are saying things that are beyond reach because the teachers themselves were not prepared to handle online teaching. The learners themselves were not prepared to handle online teaching. The parents and everybody else, even the minister itself was not ready. So when you say that you are going to make people learn online, I think it's a bit, it's using your fertile imagination of things that should happen. But going into the future possibly. But currently, I am very doubtful, and not myself alone. Many are doubtful that this thing can work of online learning. Yes.
So is this a time that we can say the crisis has provided us with an opportunity to improve and maximize on our ICT operations?
I think...
Because as you have said that we have not prepared, so is this a time?
I think all along, we knew such a thing may happen. Although we didn't know it would come in the form it has come. But when the Jubilee government said it wanted to make this country digital, they had their priorities right. It's only that we talk much than we deliver. Hence, if that would have been pursued, possibly it would have found us in a better footing than it has found us. Otherwise, presently, we do not have the capacity to handle ICT, to handle online teaching, but as it had been, the dream was. The dream was that is where we should be. So we should feel sorry, we should apologize that we never got there, and hope that this will be a wake-up call for all of us, that we shouldn't know the direction the world is heading to and then move slowly. If the world is heading to a certain direction, let us go into that direction, because this is a global village, as we always say. Hence, let us have all what it takes for us to handle such things. Presently, we are at a loss because coronavirus came, it is settled, it is with us. We do not know when these lockdowns will come to an end. Although they are partial, we don't know when they are coming to an end. Because if you see the announcements that are being made, the numbers seem to be coming out at the same level. Yes. Hence, we don't know, we don't have even an exit plan out of this. So, after the 3 weeks, what next? We do not know whether there will be an additional 3 weeks. Our prayer is that this will be the final one. But that's our prayer. Prayers are not always answered by God the way we would wish them answered. God has his own designs. Yes. Hence, we need to be prepared early enough over everything, not just because a pandemic has broken out.
Yes. So what can you say in terms of maybe institutions, higher learning institutions especially, because we have seen this even going through with Mount Kenya University, because there's that distant program that they've been having. What can you say about higher learning institutions adopting remote learning?
I would say the institutions of higher learning may be slightly better off as a number of them, yes, but they are also below the mark. When you talk about online education, there are students who do online studies, but the percentage is very small. Many of them prefer face-to-face, classes. Even some who start as online students eventually find out that it's a bit cumbersome for them. So eventually they become full-time students because they want to attend class, they want to talk to a teacher, they want to, they want that state because that is what works best. So there are institutions of higher learning that have attempted to do online education, and a survey needs to be done because I don't think it has been very successful. Because even some of those students who learn online, they have a time they come to the university for face-to-face tuition. Yes. So you'll never find a situation where students are learning online all the way through the course. I know that happens in universities that are in the developed world. Students undertake online studies and they will never even go there even for a single visit. But here, even those institutions that are administering online education still provide an opening for those students to come and have a face-to-face with the lecturers. So it isn't a very successful venture. A survey needs to be done. But I would tell you, from what I have gathered from several universities, none of the universities is doing it. They talk about it maybe for marketing. But for sure, if you go to the ground, as they say, mambo ni tofauti. Yes.
Okay, so should government, the Minister of Education, that is, have some input on this remote learning?
As I started by saying, Gala, I think the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development could be sleeping on the job. Because I remember years back when we were young, there were radio broadcasts when we used to listen to prepared lessons. And they were very useful, they were very helpful. They supplemented what the teachers were teaching us. I don't know, since that appears to have died, what they are doing, because now they should have moved us to the next level of online and such things. Maybe they should have memory sticks that they are distributing and saying, bring learners together, get a radio or get a player and let the students follow these lessons. And that could maybe prepare our learners for the exams. If the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development would have such things, because they used to have CDs, I remember. They used to have, what we used to call tapes that had lessons for every subject. The only area that would be a bit difficult is the practical area. But for other areas that are taught already, they had materials for that. So my question is, what is KICD doing now? Because this is the time we should be seeing them learning about, even as we observe social distance, even as we observe all manner of hygiene, they should come and maybe bring learners together in a room, in a ward. We have wards. Students can be brought together, learners can be brought there, the Form 4s in one room, the class, without now even factoring the issue of where you go to school. We all are the same challenge. Maybe, I think KICD should be ordered to do such things. Yes.
Okay, let's have some quick commercial break. Don't go far. I'll see you shortly after the break.
Hi everyone, I bring you greetings in the precious and wonderful name of our Lord Jesus Christ. My name is Reverend Anthony. I'm the director of the youth department at the PCEA Church. We are just in the post-Youth Week period, and I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who participated in making our Youth Week 2020 a great success. Cheers to the ministers, the elders, the patrons, the youth leaders, the youth pastors, everybody, and even our church leadership who participated in making it a great success. But then we still have to ask ourselves, how do we go on from here? The curfew, the semi-lockdown has been extended for an extra 21 days. One of the things that we now have to deal with is anxiety. We have to deal with worry. We have to deal with doubts that are arising in young people who continue to stay at home. They cannot go to school, they cannot go to work. They have to postpone their plans. What does the Word of God say to young people in anxiety? What does the Word of God say to church leaders, youth leaders, parents who are living with their young ones, as well as the youth themselves? The Word of God says in Philippians chapter 4, verse 6 up to 7, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which passes all human understanding, will keep you, will guard your heart and minds through Christ Jesus. Join me on CAC TV this Sunday, 3:30 to 4:30 on Youth Tuko. My guest to discuss this topic is going to be Reverend Edward Furi, live on CAC TV. God bless you and see you there.
Welcome back to Youthpad, and today we are discussing the impact of COVID-19 on education, and with me in studio is Reverend Thegu Motahi from Presbyterian University of East Africa, trying to, as we reflect together on the education sector in this country and how much it has been affected by the COVID-19. And Mr. Reverend Thegu, talking about online learning, we have some institutions that have started telling parents to pay some amount of fees so that the learning can continue. What's your take on that?
I think, as I said, the education sector was not prepared for the pandemic. And no institution, I guess, was ready to offer online education. But I'm sure because universities and colleges would want to earn money. And since they also undergoing financial stress, they were also undergoing financial stress even before the outbreak of the pandemic. They would like to earn money. Therefore, when they talk about charges for online education, we need somebody who can really vet what online education they are offering for them to charge a certain amount of money. And since they had already stipulated the fees, the tuition fees that should be paid while the students were in session, I would think that money would still be adequate or even surplus for them to offer online education. Hence, I think it would not be right for any institution, unless we are advised otherwise, to ask for extra money, because already universities were charging money for ICT. Yeah. There's a unit or something to that extent about ICT that universities were charging. Now that the students are not in session, I think the money the students pay for fees would be adequate. Again, knowing that this is piloting, knowing that it has never been tried before. So universities should go out of their way and offer this online education without charging distressed learners and their parents and guardians, asking for more money for something we are not very sure of. And again, as I said, we should have a body that is trying to vet this online education. Is it really online education? And does it come with a cost, as they would ask money for? Let us not be so quick to ask for money for something that has not been tried, for something that has not been successful, because we may end up giving learners a raw deal. Yes. That would be my take on that area.
Okay. And also in terms of younger students, pupils at primary schools, talking about online, that is remote learning. How can this be effectively done to ensure that there is a sort of flexible scheduling so that we take care of the children?
Where there is online learning, there is a module even for young children, something that would work for them, so that you don't bombard them with so much, yet their minds can only take this little. You know, the concentration span of young learners is very small. But where online education is successful, they have modules for such an age. And my worry is that maybe we do not have that. I know that there are some young children who are very conversant with digital gadgets, because when they were born, they have been able to access these and make use of them. But there are others who are still trying to learn how these are used. Young children learn very fast. But again, you have to avail these gadgets for them. You have to ensure that they are supervised. So it would be a bit not easy to bring young children on board without proper supervision of somebody who understands. And that's why it would have been good if this had been piloted earlier. But now trying it out there with parents who may even be ignorant than their children, then who is going to supervise the children as they go through this. And the teachers themselves, they themselves may also not be conversant with the use of ICT. Of course, there are many who are, but there may be a possibility of others who are not.
Yeah.
Hence, it is not something you can, lash into and assume that it will be successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and also you've talked about parents supervising their children. What about that pupil, that children who is in the interior of Turkana in the rural setup? Who is going to supervise? Maybe the parents maybe doesn't have that knowledge when it comes to ICT operation.
Well, Gala, that's a very big challenge, because we know that we have situations where parents are even absent. We have situations where children are not in their homes. Hence, if you expect this to be successful, there are many things you need to put into account. Because if the children are not with their parents, because there are areas where people live nomadic lives, and children are out there for pastures, the parents are away for pastures, who is actually going to supervise these children to ensure that they do what is expected when you are trying to, assuming that even that online education is reaching them? Who is going to supervise? Who is going to be there for them? In case they get stuck, who is going to help them to get out of the situation that they are in? And we know that our country has situations that are very difficult. Like now we know in West Pokot and is it Elgeyo Marakwet, there were floods. Yeah. People are displaced, homes were destroyed, and that's not the only place. Floods have affected very many places. Sure. And things have been destroyed, lives have been lost. So how do you avail education in such a context? So this is not something that we can lash into. This is not something we can say is going to work, because we may end up only attending to the needs of a fraction of the population, leaving out a bigger percentage of the population unattended. And that is not the purpose of education. If you go into the Bill of Rights in our Constitution, education is a right. Yeah. But when you bring it online, as we are saying, yeah, you are excluding quite a big population of our children because they will not access this education. Yes. So you have violated the Constitution. So you just need to say that you have covered the syllabus for someone to go to court, Omtata to go to court and say, this education was not available to everybody, yes, because some people could not access it because they were suffering from this or that. Yes. Even the partial lockdown in some of the counties have affected some parents. There are some parents who are away from their children. So they are not even there to avail what is needed for online education, because I remember there was a lady who was talking the other day and saying she went to Eldoret for a function, then the lockdown was declared, Nairobi was closed, so she can't get back. On the day, the 21 days were elapsing, she thought then she would come back, only to be told there's another extension. So how do you expect such a parent who is supposed to be there to avail what the paraphernalia needed for ICT to be there for her children? So there are things that we cannot really overlook. But as I said, you need parents to get, you need all stakeholders to work with their children in the implementation of online education. Okay. Yes.
Okay, Reverend, talking about schools serves as a place, apart from education, schools also serves as a place where someone is offered support, social and physical. It is also a place where someone can feel a sense of security. I mean, what do you know do you know anything about non-education challenges and support for students?
Sure. The fact that children are not going to school, Gala, has also brought in other challenges, because as you have said, there are children who go to school because there will be food. Yeah. There's provision for food. They don't take any other meal other than the meal they receive at school. Yeah. Now that one is gone. We know even in urban areas, schools act as babysitters. Because some homes, they do not have nannies. They do not have house helps. The parents are happy because as they go to work, the children also go to school. And therefore, they will be taken care of by the teachers, yes, to come back in the evening and meet with their parents. Yeah. So other than the interruption of learning, there are also interruptions of many other areas in the life of the pupils, in the lives of the learners, in the lives of all stakeholders. There are also people who supply those schools. They are also affected because they can no longer supply because the schools are closed. So it has a multiplier effect on very many areas of the economy and even on matters society. Because as I said, the students who go to school to get a meal will not get it. Again, let's assume that some parents had already paid fees. That is money they knew they would not have, they did not have at home to take care of their children because they had already surrendered it to the school. Now the money is in school because it will not be refunded. And the students are back home and they need the services that they require that would have been offered in school. So again, that again brings another challenge. So there are myriad of challenges. A good survey needs to be done to document the kind of interruption to life that has come as a result of closure of schools.
Okay, talking about also homeschooling is also seen as an alternative to traditional in a classroom setting. What kind of systems are there for emergency learning, like in the wake of this crisis?
Traditionally, we know that home was the school where a lot of learning took place. And even today, a lot of learning takes place in homes. But I think many of our parents have, had already surrendered that to schools. So many of our parents are not very well versed with how to handle learning. Although the learning in homes is not usually a structured thing, but it will still need people who are ready to offer it. The skills that young people learn from their parents, they learn from homes. But remember that some homes are not even safe for children. We know that there is violence directed at children in very many forms when they are at home. And that's why even parents would prefer their children to be in school, because there are all manner of predators out there out to harm children. Well, fortunately now there may be more parents at home than there were previously. But I dare say that even some parents have also turned out to be harmful to their own children. So the matter of homeschooling may work to a certain percentage and may not work. One, because the parents may not be well equipped to administer it. And two, because of the environment in some of the homes. Okay. And we know there are people who live in formal setups where they do not even have adequate space for such learning, because one room to another, there isn't adequate space for you to do certain things. Hence, it is something we should think about going into the future, about how we can make our homes a place where children learn. There are homes that I would say are ready for it, but there are many others that are not ready for such learning. Yes.
Okay, graduates have been also hardly hit by the emergency of this virus. Take an example, Riara University had to postpone its graduation owing to this pandemic. What can you say about graduation calendars that are always due this year? Maybe November, we have always others on July and December.
Well, graduations are pegged on coverage of syllabus. Unless those to graduate had already covered their curriculum and were waiting for graduation, as it is the case in some universities. Yes. But if those in session was the ones to graduate, then it will be difficult to graduate them, because what will you do with what they have not covered? There is that talk of ICT and online learning. If it can be availed, then it can help. Because graduation does not have to take place as a big ceremony. We can have a sort of make-believe graduation where you have a few people and the rest graduating in absentia. Because even when we have those big graduation ceremonies, not everybody attends. Yeah. And physical non-attendance of a graduation does not stop you from graduating. So graduation as a ceremony does not have to take place the way it does. It still can happen if syllabus has been fully covered. Yes. But the challenge will be, has the syllabus been covered? Any practical work that you are required to do, which cannot be undertaken now, is part of the syllabus. If you are not able to avail that, you are not ready for a graduation. Because the hours that will be covered through attachment, maybe I'm doing a course in mass communication. I need to come here and work with you.
Yeah.
Now, because of social distancing, you may not allow me to come and sit with you here. You take me aloud and involve me. So if I'm doing a course in mass communication, I may not graduate because there is a missing unit in my syllabus.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm saying. The graduations may only take place if the students had already gone through the syllabus as stipulated.
Yeah.
If they had not gone through it, then the case of Riara University will be repeated in many other universities.
Okay. Okay, for the few colleges and universities that will make to graduate their students, do you think there's a need to have policies in place to support these graduates so that to support their entry into the labor market so as to avoid long unemployment periods?
I think it's still possible to, if people have graduated, if we have graduates, I think organizations should be ready to recruit. Although I know they will also be reluctant to recruit because of the challenge of finances. But organizations should be ready to recruit because you don't have to do physical interviews. There are still virtual interviews that can be undertaken. Although I'm sure many institutions would want a situation where they have to see the person and interview them, look at a number of things in the candidate. So I'm not sure how this would unfold, but although I know that there are institutions that would interview you because that happens. You can even apply for a job and be interviewed without physically going there. But these are very few jobs. Most of the jobs they would want to see you so that they know who they are interviewing, even if they were to interview you virtually. So there will still be a slowdown. There are some institutions that may hire, very few, but many institutions will prefer to wait and see. But I think once one has graduated, it will be good for them to wait while they have graduated if they have covered the syllabus, rather than not have graduated yet they have covered the syllabus and then have to graduate and then start another process of job seeking.
Yeah.
Yes.
So what can be done to mitigate the negative impacts on education sector?
I would say that we cannot look at the education sector in isolation.
Yes.
We look at it against what is happening in regard to the effects of coronavirus. So the education sector cannot fully be protected from the effects of coronavirus in isolation. You have to look at everything else. But as I said,
I mean, what do you propose given the limitation of our system?
I would, we have bodies already that are charged with the responsibility of regulating education in this country. As I said, we have what is called KICD, previously called the Kenya Institute of Education, and it was a very active body then. They need to think about, suppose this situation prolongs, how can they help learners? What modalities can they put in place to help learners so that there isn't much loss, such that the learners can also take exams at some point? We have also the Commission of University Education. We also have the TVET body that can look at how they can advise institutions to see how they can handle the situation at hand. And that's why we have smart people employed in such bodies, I assume. People who can think through a crisis. You cannot sleep when you have such a challenge. You should be exercising your mind to ask yourself, how do we go through this crisis? As KICD, as the Commission on University Education, as TVET, what can we do to help institutions? Suppose this situation prolongs. How long can our institutions remain closed? What other modalities can be put in place such that some learning goes on, such that learners don't lose an entire year? These are the bodies that should do this thinking. And as I said earlier, I wish KICD would revive the radio broadcasts so that we now be asking ourselves, where will the learners access the broadcasts? Because radio broadcast is more effective than online and internet things. Radios may be within a walking distance of all the learners. Maybe there is a way of bringing them together. Those in Form 4, if they do not have a radio, if they can't do it at home, bring them together, avail a radio from a government, and make them go through learning, of course, observing social distance. These are some of the things that they should be thinking in regard to going into the future, because we do not know how long we shall be in this crisis.
Okay, as we wind up with this conversation about the impact of COVID-19 on education, what about the subsidizing of the fees, maybe terms, semester fees to the students, and also because we understand some students pay their own sponsor their education, and also talking about you also talk about learning institutions have been used as isolation centers for those suspected to have the virus. I mean, as it stands now, we've not had any information that to fumigate these institutions. What's your take?
I had somebody suggesting that this is the time to fumigate the institutions because the lands are away, and not all institutions are being used as isolation centers. Maybe this would be the right time to fumigate them, so that when the runners resume, the places will be safe for them. Yeah. However, it is still a challenge to do that, because we are also experiencing a challenge of supplies because of the lockdown that is happening in other countries, and many of the items that we use are supplied from other countries. So how we are able to access enough for us to do those things, it will require a lot of patience, it will require a lot of innovation. But it would be a good thing to make the learning institutions ready for that. In terms of fees, I think, again, that is where the regulators, the bodies that regulate, because universities, colleges, and secondary schools, primary schools do not just offer education without a regulator. There should be a regulator who is able to assess the situation at hand, such that we do not have, learners losing simply because there are institutions that want to profit from this situation. I hear there are some institutions that have said, we are offering online education and this is more expensive, therefore you are going to send us this more amount of money. Yet the people you're asking to send you more money are not earning at the moment. So that's where the regulators need to be very keen, so that we do not have institutions that want to profit out of this disaster and charge for things they are not delivering, and trying to cushion even the runners themselves so that they do not have to be asked for money which they cannot afford at a time like now. We need to be more humane, but knowing how people try to profit from all manner of crisis, the best thing is the regulators to be very keen and observant, to put an eye on what is happening, the developments within the institutions, so that they are able to stop what should not happen, and they are able to advise on what should happen. In the same way they are saying that, when it comes to reopening of restaurants, these are some of the protocols that you need to fulfill. Yeah. In the same way, if any institution is going to offer education in a certain way, they need to be asked to provide that, to show how it will be administered, and to show the expenses that are involved. And I think we should be spending more of our time thinking about education, even beyond what we are now talking about. From where I sit, I think it would not have been even very urgent to talk about restaurants. We should have started by talking about education, because education is more critical. Because since you have told people to stay at home, they may not even need to go to the restaurants. But for education, this is something that should be going on, almost every day, and somehow it's not going on. Hence, this is something we should be thinking, and I haven't seen like we have done enough in regard to thinking about education that is now not ongoing.
Yes.
Yes.
So what's your parting shot even as we finish this conversation?
Tough situations do happen, like the one we are in, and they will come to an end. But I think the best thing is to learn from such things so that we come out of them better. We don't have to talk about it in future as misery that befell us, but as an opportunity to become better people. Because when this is done, because it will come to an end. We have seen countries that have started reopening. Hence, we can learn from this to become better Kenyans, become better people, become better believers. You know, in all our sectors of life, there's something good that can come. And maybe the future generations will be able to look back and say, our parents, our grandparents were advised by a crisis that befell them, and they became better people going forward. Yes. When people have gone through crisis, there are times they come out as better people than they were previously.
Okay. Thank you so much, Reverend Vegu Mutai, for making time to come around and share your ideas as far as the education sector is concerned. I am really grateful and so much thankful.
Thank you.
Thank you. And also, thank you so much for watching Youthpad. My name is Francis Singala, and always to my fellow young men and women out there, don't hesitate to study from home. And you can also send your feedback through our social media handles at CACTV_Kenya and Facebook CACTV. See you next Friday.